Fantastic. Well, hello and welcome to everybody to the How Insurance Carriers Can Maximize Independent Agents webcast. I'm Heather Rhyne-Christensen. I'm the Financial Services Practice Leader at Zennify, a Platinum Salesforce partner, and we have a really great agenda for you today. So let's get started. So we've got quite a lineup today. We've got Brian Greenlees, Jake Billmeyer, and Doug Stitzer from Salesforce, as well as Aaron Witt from Sammons Financial. Today, we're really going to cover off a few items that will give us a good foundation of how carriers can maximize their independent agent relationships. So we're going to start off with state of the carrier. I'll go into that with a little bit of detail. Brian will head into a Salesforce demo. We'll have a brief discussion with Aaron Witt of Sammons Financial, and then we'll wrap it up with some carrier distribution management and industry perspective. If you have any questions during the webcast, please feel free to send over to social@zennify.com. We'll do our best to answer some of those midstream, although we do not have chat functionality here. So with that, I'll start off with state of the carrier. So I think we're all pretty familiar with J.D. Power, but what I have found a bit surprising about how low the insurer-agency relationship score is in terms of service satisfaction. In 2019, this relationship scored the lowest of all business relationships J.D. Power measured. All relationships. This leaves an amazing opportunity to engage your independent agents and help them maximize their customer relationships. Across the industry, there is definitely a space to create a true value proposition here. This might seem a little bit straightforward, but the low scores and satisfaction industry-wide show the need for meaningful engagement that will really drive revenue and increase productions as agents drive a greater number of products and recommend carriers to their overall general network. So you can see here an overview from independent insurance agent satisfaction study from J.D. Power on the left, and just some of the reiteration of that takeaway of recommending the carrier to a network. There's not only a production opportunity to partner better, but also process improvement with less time spent across the board on administrative tasks like licensing, and makes your team and agency more efficient. In the end, as more products get commoditized, having a value proposition that's easy to do business with will garner loyalty from your independent agents. So we understand the value and ease of partnering with our agencies, but how do we take this to the next level? So I've outlined here some of the key questions that we ask when we're working with insurance companies, from executives to field sales managers, to identify some of the pain points or lack of data and transparency into agency relationships. It is one thing to make the overall interface and processes more streamlined, but without visibility into agency performance, well, I've kind of outlined it here, you can't manage what you can't measure. Creating a value proposition around agency relationship also requires the ability to identify top performers, create sustainable and consistent action plans, and really manage the relationship using the data your organization already has, and then making it accessible. So we've covered off some of great opportunities across a carrier and independent agents relationship. So with that, I'm going to introduce Brian Greenlees to go over a brief demo of Salesforce that identify these opportunities.
Thank you, Heather. So we're going to step through a couple personas today just to tee up the demonstration. We're going to walk through Olivia Woodson, who's an individual with Cumulus Insurance who manages a territory. Frank Levin, principal at one of the insurers within her territory, as well as take a peek into Donna Billmeyer and her interaction with Cumulus Insurance. So when we first log in as Olivia Woodson, we could take a look at my cockpit of being able to understand the performance of my territory. Everything that I need to do to be able to understand and drive performance is centrally located directly on my screen. Data aggregated from multiple back-end systems brought together through an integration strategy with tools such as MuleSoft allows me to have overlays to understand who are my top performing agencies, such as Levin Insurance, and be able to understand the trends by product and the submissions and cancellations that we might have within their particular portfolio. Across the top, our product team has highlighted to me that we've generated a new product for our region. And so it's my task to go out and ensure that my agencies understand what the product is about, and so that they can begin to place it with their customers. So as I'm preparing to go out into market to be able to understand Levin Insurance agency visits are a breeze now, being able to aggregate information, everything from summary level details about the demographic details of Levin to the high level metrics around performance with our product portfolio, as well as to be able to get into analyzing and understanding each individual producer by line of business to be able to understanding white space opportunities, whether it's product education or just visits that will help me to be able to help drive their understanding of how we can support their customers. Overlooking the entire book of business, as well as identifying individual team summaries where I can see specifics around individual producers as I'm preparing for that visit. As I'm preparing to meet with Frank Levin, I as well has the producer 360 view of being able to understand not just his agency, but of that individual principal. Snapshots around the performance that he's had with us, as well as being able to have quick summary metrics around how is he trending around active lines of business, such as property, his submission, quote, and binding ratios. All there highlighted for me, very easy to see. On my home screen, I had a task to be able to understand that Silva is a recent customer that Frank has brought to us. So not just being able to have that broker 360, but as well as to be able to drill in and see specifics around their customers. So data that we have helped me to prepare to have a better conversation around the type of risk he's hoping to place, so that I'm having a more seamless interaction and improving that agent experience as we're preparing to have a conversation. So as Olivia, I'm not just glued to my desk, but I'm also heading out into the market. So I go ahead and want to be able to take my data with me on the go. And so in order to do that, Salesforce enables me with the Salesforce mobile application, where Olivia can now go ahead and log in, be able to drill into specific data records such as Silva or Levin, as well as to be able to interact with those individual pieces of information. Everything from being able to track action plans, as Heather mentioned, log a call directly with within the context that the team knows that we had a great visit. But being in that, Levin is based in Chicago, and being based in Chicago myself, I know that both O'Hare and Midway can be very busy and sometimes delay flights. So if I have opportunity in an open window of time to be able to get wider within my territory, I can now bring my data to me and graphically represent it on a map so that I know who else could I stop by around in this particular location. As I go ahead and take a look at, let's take a look at all of my agencies or advisors within this territory based and sorted by last visit. So as I take a look, I can see color representations based off of production or the last time I was there, and target specific agencies that I know that I can get to now with my open availability of time. I can drill in and see those specific agencies, as well as to be able to go directly to the records and get snapshot of visibility into their production information with me. Of course, it's a map, so I can utilize this functionality to be able to be taken directly to their location. Lo and behold, I'm actually very, very close. So from a perspective of being able to unlock data that could potentially be trapped in back-end systems, Olivia now has all of that at her fingertips, is able to segment and understand who her top agencies are, bottom agencies are, and prioritize her time based off of the work she's looking to accomplish. We're now going to break over into Donna. So Donna is also a current appointed agent of our Cumulus Insurance. And Donna's received a notification that one of her applications that she submitted, we needed updated licensing information on. So as she goes ahead and navigates through that communication that we've sent out to her, she lands into a shared space in which we can collaborate around. Everything from being able to promote out to her the external information about being able to see what her production looks like with Cumulus Insurance, supporting her through marketing campaigns. But she's navigated directly now to going ahead and taking a look at licensing. And as she pulls up and sees what she's exchanged information with Cumulus already around, she can go ahead and see there's actually a couple items that she has to be able to take action upon. As she drills in, she noticed she's uploaded all of the appropriate documentation, and they simply need a signature as a part of this view. So I can go ahead and save that in. And I go back to the agency, the other item here, now that that signature is put in place. Notice that there's files that I need to upload. So the exchange of information for me to be able to go ahead and upload files, drag and drop that information into the correct spot, allows me to be able to have that seamless exchange of information so that the operations of the company are not slowed down as we're looking to go ahead and submit back out a quote to her. As the documents become uploaded, what's most important is there's transparency in the process so that Donna is comfortable that she knows it's been received, it's being actioned on, and it's being worked through. This particular view of the tracker as it relates to work can be applied to multiple situations, whether it's the initial contracting phase of Donna just coming on board with Cumulus Insurance and being comfortable and knowing that her application is being moved through, or whether it being a new submission being placed into Cumulus and being able to see those items across. So from a perspective of having that seamless communication between Donna and Cumulus Insurance, Salesforce can help to facilitate that ability for you to be providing that preferred experience to your advisors and agents and be able to manage the relationship to enable to excel. So from a perspective of demonstration, we just briefly walked through the ability for Olivia to see her holistic territory, understand what it looks like from slicing and dicing their book of business and understand where she should focus and spend her time, analytics specific to Frank and for preparation for an agency visit so she can have richer conversations, making Frank happy that Cumulus knows who she is. And ultimately Donna, who is drawn into a space in which you could collaborate operationally in order to have a seamless communication around any piece of work and the exchange of data between Cumulus and Bill Meyer Life. With that, we're going to move our webinar on to Jake Bellmeyer and continue on with the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. That was hugely helpful. I love seeing some of that analytics on the right-hand side about prediction scores and ways that we can really improve the relationship, make it actionable, and see that come through. I'm going to go back and share my screen. And as you spoke to, we've got Jake Billmeyer, Senior Account Executive at Salesforce, and Aaron Witt from Sammons Financial Group to talk about, honestly, what will be most likely a splice of what they've built out at Sammons and what you just showed, Brian, and speak to some of their experience there. So with that, I will hand it off.
Great, thanks, Heather, and thanks, Brian, for providing that visualization and indication of what Salesforce can help insurance carriers with their agent experience. So I've been at Salesforce for almost 5 years now. Previously, before diving into the technology world, I was a former financial advisor through an MGA out of Iowa. So a lot of the challenges that I highlighted today were near and dear to my heart. And definitely a focus for how I try to help other insurance carriers that I support. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce Aaron Witt, who is the Salesforce product owner over at Sammons Financial. Aaron, you've had a pretty interesting journey throughout your career in the insurance industry. You want to tell us a little bit about how you got started and how you ended up at Sammons?
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Yeah, it has. It's been an interesting journey. It's been a lot of fun, really. So I began working for a large commercial insurance brokerage back in 2006. I spent the first few years of that really driving some data initiatives, forward across a number of different business lines and operating companies. And then, as time went on, my role expanded. I took on oversight of data and analytics functions. I was doing a lot of solution design through various platforms, and then also really in charge of the overall user experience with those. So, and then later, of course, in my tenure, after I started to, take on those things and really was owning those, I began working directly with large clients. And what we were trying to do there was align our technology strategy to our customer value. And ultimately, Salesforce has been an integral part of that story, throughout that entire process.
That's great. Definitely seems that if you've had some experience on both ends of the table, from the brokerage space as well as now being at an insurance carrier with Sammons. Tell us a little bit more about how you were leveraging Salesforce and your specific Salesforce journey.
Yeah, it's a long story, but I'll try to get through it here. So in 2009, we really started to begin to try to solve for a way to align, a culturally and geographically diverse sales team, in a CRM capacity, right? And Salesforce was a natural fit for that. It had the added benefits over competitors of being cloud-based that let a business unit own it because it was configuration. We didn't have to do a lot of code management and things like that. But as with most organizations embarking on the CRM journey, we really struggled with user adoption for a few years. Big Brother was a term thrown around a lot, as I'm sure we all know. Sales teams that are involved in the financial services industry really don't have a lot of appetite for having somebody look down at what they do or look over what they do. But ultimately, it came to a point where that adoption had to be understood as whether or not it was bringing value. So we had to take a hard look at that ROI. So it's coincidental, but during this time, we were in the process of evaluating how to modernize our data compliance platform. And ultimately, as a large organization with a diverse set of business lines, we had a hard time finding a solution that accommodated all of them. We could hit the property casualty spectrum or the employee benefit spectrum, but we just never really found anything that hit all of it. So what we were surprised to find was, as our sales team demanded making sure that those compliance needs were in alignment with their needs, and we evaluated Salesforce, we found Salesforce was able to accommodate everything we wanted to do. So ultimately, we were able to build this compliance platform inside Salesforce in alignment with our CRM, and we were able to meet all of their requirements with mostly configuration, very minimal code. And the icing on the cake for that was really the impact to adoption for those sales folks, because we were starting to add more capabilities to that CRM function as they had historically understood it. And it really started to change our ROI story around what we were able to do with Salesforce by leveraging that existing software expense. So, the celebration of that was great, and we were able to really enjoy being able to put something in front of users that really met their needs. But, it was pretty short-lived. We ended up having a massive surge of demand for people to evaluate Salesforce for other potential benefits. So we started looking at things like agency management systems and custom applications we had, on legacy platforms that were managing insurance specialties like group captive insurance and third-party claims administration. And so, ultimately we got to a point where we were getting pretty serious about those conversations, to the extent that our CEO even started messaging Salesforce to our company as kind of our platform of the future. And while I had involvement in, a lot of those projects, I'm probably most proud of, the innovative work we did reimagining what we could do with a third-party claims administration system. So we completely self-built that inside of Salesforce, completely contained within Salesforce as well, all natively built. But we moved from a vendor-provided self-hosted TPA system to Salesforce, obviously being a cloud-built platform. We consolidated 30 years of claims history out of 5 separate data sets, And we were really, truly building that inside Salesforce. It wasn't just an integration point for us. The data was truly housed inside there. And really, it's clear as you go through that process of building something like that out, Salesforce is up to the task. It's built to do that type of work. So, we used it for our internal teams and then extended that functionality out through a community site to our customers and our external partners. And ultimately, we were able to leverage all the assets and things that we had built inside Salesforce and extend those to our customers without having to build a completely separate and independent environment. So for the first time, we were directly aligned across all areas of our technology platform, and we were able to act as, a provider, customer, and partner team to advance all those strategies together, as opposed to acting like we were, always trying to react to what their needs were and really never feeling like we were caught up.
Wow, that's great. Definitely sounds like you're really trying to understand what the customer is looking for, the outcomes you're looking to drive, and then understand the capabilities of Salesforce to help you solve for those instances. I'd love to hear, now being on the other side of the table, how you're leveraging Salesforce at Sammons to provide that type of an experience for the independent advisors that you engage with.
Yeah, you're spot on. That's exactly right. So, transitioning to today, I've taken on a very exciting opportunity at Sammons, beginning to implement, kind of a similar model of technology partnership. To your point, we really do want to align to our customers and let them drive what that experience should feel like moving forward. So we're leveraging the financial services cloud insurance data model to provide that 360-degree view of our agents and partners. We're using Marketing Cloud to automate communication, and then ultimately putting communities in place for that digital agent portal, which is designed to be our customer-centric, customer-first focus. We want to solve for the agent experience challenges that have plagued this industry for years. Policy information, assets under management, real-time contracting and onboarding process, real-time new business status, and even the interactions and the context of those things are all available to our teams in a seamless experience. We want to work directly in collaboration with agents and partners through this intuitive system, and we want them to know that their needs are our first priority in all of this. So we take all of that, and now we're going to wrap that inside the Einstein platform, where we're going to be able to use AI and machine learning to gain insights on the data that we will get from that experience that human analysts, they just simply can't process without tremendous amounts of resources. So we're really looking forward to the insights that we're going to get from that.
That's awesome. So really focused in maximizing the engagement that you have in transparency with the advisors to accelerate onboarding and make it easier to do business with Sammons Financial Group. That which takes me to my next point is traditionally and in more historic fashion, you've seen it's common practice for insurance carriers to build these types of applications and experiences in-house versus partnering with other organizations to provide that framework and applications. So what about Salesforce felt that you could rely on it to deliver these needs and excite you about the work that you're doing across this agent experience?
Yeah, and again, you're spot on, right? The financial services industry is packed with software vendors that are trying to sell you a silver bullet. These legacy vendors really believe that they can sell you a platform that manages all aspects of your business model, and they want to put it in a closed system, so that you can't really manage that to your own individual needs, which really puts you into a difficult position as somebody who's trying to create value. So I remember once speaking with one of these large vendors about their platform, and we were talking about data access, and I was actually told, quote, "You don't need to worry about the data, we manage that for you," which I thought was such a telling statement about the condition of the marketplace, and really how these vendors view your interaction with information, and what you need to do with that. So the real innovation we see with Salesforce is our ability to take vendor provided capability or features and extend it through truly native configuration to shape those capabilities around our business needs. That configuration is always going to be faster than code. And ultimately, that model of agility provides our business the ability to keep up with the evolving demands of our independent advisors and distribution partners. What really excites me about that model as well is our ability to remain in conversation with our customers and partners and keep us in a mode of continuous improvement and delivery. No longer do we have to stop the feedback loop so we can get into the development cycles and allow those to, catch up to what we heard from feedback. By the time we re-engage that conversation, that feedback is gone and we have a new set of feedback. So we always felt like we were behind, right? And now we're able to catch up and work in alignment with the business.
So you're able to accelerate the organizational delivery and time to value by partnering with Salesforce, but still remain agile to the dynamic, changing business environment. That's pretty great.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, what would you say some of the common misconceptions around Salesforce's impact, specifically for the insurance space?
Yeah, it's, when you talk to people about Salesforce, price tag is always the first comment that comes up. In comparison to traditional industry offerings, the license cost does appear expensive. But when you really dig into it and you look at the total cost of ownership, and all the components that are involved in these traditional platforms, it just ends up playing out that the cost of a license to access Salesforce generally, and in every instance I've ever evaluated, ends up being cheaper than the total cost of ownership of these platforms. A lot of times those platforms involve proprietary systems are built on and things like that. And those are the hidden costs that really can kind of catch you by surprise. Recognition as only being a CRM is another misconception. I think people think that Salesforce is still just a CRM platform, and that I think hasn't been true for a long time now. The capabilities that Salesforce offers extend far beyond traditional CRM capabilities. We talked about it up above with how we were able to develop fully fleshed out platforms all natively inside Salesforce. It really can act as a full development platform, and with that configuration-based system in the majority of those cases, the speed and agility are far and away better than anything you're going to get out of a traditional platform.
That's interesting. Appreciate that vantage point there. But when you look in the future, talk about some of the digital strategies that you feel Sammons would benefit from, or even other insurance carriers, and where do you feel Salesforce is going to make that impact?
Absolutely. So agility is the heart of our strategy. It's really what makes the whole thing work. If we can't be agile, we can't align. So where we can find applicable vendor-based solutions with enough value to justify the investment, we can buy them and install them. And in areas where those solutions are maybe deficient, we can natively extend those directly inside the platform through that configuration. So taking all those components that we've talked about up above and adding that velocity and agility through this approach is really what's going to drive us forward. I believe this is really our true transformation into a data-driven technology platform. Everything is about the data and our ability to use it to create that tailored experience while maintaining that speed and to market through that agility. So, that agility reacting to market conditions is ultimately going to be our strength and our competitors' weakness.
That's great to be able to use that as a differentiator for your value add and in a very competitive space, servicing independent advisors like that. Last question for you, Aaron. Again, appreciate the time today. For those companies that are hesitant to begin on this journey, what advice would you give, significant lessons learned, throughout your experience?
Yeah, the real takeaway, I think, if I were to hand out one thing, especially in our industry, is there's just no silver bullet. Extensibility and scalability are the new game. You got to start small, start with solid use cases, Don't get too complicated out of the gate. Build on what you do well and communicate it. Share the platform's capabilities with your teams and constantly gauge their interest. You'll be surprised how small capabilities really make a big difference. The alignment of IT folks to business generally means that IT promotes technologically advanced capabilities, and that's not always what's needed. Most businesses struggle with transparency and clarity, and really, I think Salesforce is the best platform we've seen that provides both.
That's great. Thanks, Aaron. We really appreciate you taking a few minutes today to talk about some of your experiences and vantage on Salesforce's value adds for your organization.
For sure. Happy to share. Thanks.
Thanks so much, guys. And I mean, I think Aaron and Jake, you hit on some really critical points. And I know as Salesforce has grown as a company, the messaging has probably moved a little bit further away from that no-code platform and that CRM conversation to what Salesforce is capable of today. So really, Aaron, as you kind of articulated just the various ways you're looking at how can Salesforce help you with your overall strategy, and in this case, really kind of maximize visibility, both for agents, but everyone within the carrier space network as well. Really great insight there, and thank you so much. I'm gonna transition the conversation over to Doug Stitzer, Global GTM Director of Insurance at Salesforce, and we'll kind of take it on home. So with that, I know, Doug, you have been within the insurance space for, most of your career, moving over to Salesforce recently. So agent distribution, force management is nothing new to you. How are you seeing carriers today engage with their agencies?
Thanks, Heather. It's really a variety of ways, and it starts, I think, first and foremost with just agency performance. It's so common when a carrier today appoints a new agency, the first thing that they do when they get done with that contracting process is to unleash their licensing team to go into all of their different policy admin systems and set up an agency record for each one of those to allow them to be able to quote and bind business, of course, to document those commission plans and so on. And it really becomes challenging to look at an agency, whether that's at a countrywide level, a regional level, an office level, or even a producer level, to say, how are they performing? What is my loyalty here from a retention aspect? Are they driving the types of new business that I want to see? Capturing those hierarchies, and then at more of a micro level, enabling, whoever it is that's the face of sales for your insurance company, whether that's underwriting, whether you have an agency management team, to be able to go out into the field and have real meaningful account planning workshops ahead of effective dates to talk about those accounts that are at risk. Do it at a market segment level, and figure out, where did you have not just opportunities to grow your books together, but where maybe there was an opportunity that you missed out on the previous year due to price or some other type of competitive pressure that you want to take another swing at here in the current year.
Absolutely. And I mean, we hear this from customers all the time, getting access to that deeper level understanding, going past the transactional and really getting more transparency there is super critical. So Brian walked us through the agency 360 view and what that can look like in the Salesforce platform. How have you seen this level of transparency really impact some of our carrier customers?
Yeah, it's been really big. I think one of the first ones has been higher retention. When you can have better insight into accounts that are potentially at risk and go back out and work with your distribution partner as a trusted partner to retain that account, it's always easier to keep your own customers than it is to drive new business. And so not just that retention, but also, as Brian highlighted through some of those views, being able to cross-sell and upsell. It's knowing your client, providing that personalized advice about how you can help them in other ways beyond what maybe that first sale looked like. So that's kind of, more from a strategic level. From more of a tactical level, it's, faster turnaround times. It's creating that not just perception, but reality with your distribution partner, that you're able to turn those quotes around very, very quickly for them. And, let's face it, we all like to do business with other entities and with people that are easy to do business with, and carriers investing in tools that allow them to process that work faster and to collaborate just simply strengthen that distribution partner relationship.
Absolutely. So, even outside of working closely with carriers, as you talked about, being on those higher hit ratios, faster turn times, increased retention, what are you hearing from carriers in terms of how we can be better partners in the ecosystem?
Yeah, it's actually a really common one, and I think it's been driven primarily by what we've all experienced with marketing, which is, especially in the personal lines, property and casualty side, there's been this consumer-driven demand to have access to everything about their policy at their fingertips. And carriers under that pressure have said, okay, we're going to create more self-serve opportunities through portals, through Salesforce communities, to allow that self-service, whether you need a certificate of insurance, maybe you need to change the address on your policy, anything in between. Those are all things that carriers are investing in more. What's really been missing is that visibility and that transparency back to the distribution partner to allow them to be able to see not just how you're interacting with the consumer, with a policyholder directly, but also on things that the agency has submitted. Right now, a lot of times, especially if it's email or document driven, the agency takes a submission, they throw it over the wall, and it goes into a carrier black hole. And so giving that transparency into where it's at, who is working on it, and being able to have that deeper collaboration is really going to break down a lot of silos that have kept these two groups from working together efficiently and from building deeper relationships.
100%. I think that just kind of speaks to the age that we operate in now. We expect to be able to see where things are in the process, when a package is going to be delivered to our homes. And I think that's finally kind of trickling into just the way we operate our businesses, right? It's no longer acceptable to have that black box and not be able to communicate back to your customer as an agent as things kind of process. So it's great to see that we're kind of catching up as an industry and really providing that level of transparency and the right technology to enable that. So I will say, one of the things that I'm seeing across the market is really a lot of agencies looking to consolidate their carrier relationships, not just focusing on hit ratios, but also how easy and dynamic carriers to work with. Are you seeing the same things?
Yeah, it is, and it's interesting because a typical setup for a carrier, and it depends on the lens you look at it through, whether it's submission volume or premium volume. You're always going to have some larger customers, and by customers I mean distribution partners here, because they really own the relationships with the policyholder. Yeah. You're going to have some distribution partners that are really massive, and they're going to continue to use email or that direct to underwriter relationship for their submissions and their collaboration. And I think there's some ways that Salesforce can continue to enhance that collaboration. Brian highlighted some of those, but it's also for those smaller distribution partners where maybe the volume isn't in play, to create that community and that portal that encourages not just standardization of a submission, but again, that transparency and that insight. And for a lot of agencies that don't have the budget to invest real heavily in infrastructure, having those portals into the carrier is actually a huge efficiency lift for their team. They know exactly what the carriers are expecting. They know what those processes and those inboxes and those dashboards are communicating back to them when they go and log in. And they also, because of that transparency, they're more comfortable with telling their policyholders to go and log in directly through the policyholder portal that those carriers are offering, knowing again that they've got that line of sight into what those interactions are and how they need to participate in that process.
That's amazing. Yeah, and you're really creating those efficiencies across the board, right? Getting a little bit deeper into that mid-office, back office, not just talking about from a sales and marketing perspective, but just making things easier and more transparent across the board. That's pretty spectacular. So you're kind of stealing the words out of my mouth on my next questions in terms of, how how we can really look to create efficiencies in the back office to the overall ecosystem, and how we're seeing carriers do that today. Is there anything else as we think about underwriting or that handoff that we should touch on?
Yeah, there are. And this is really where you look at the depth of the Salesforce ecosystem. You know, I think Aaron and Jake hit on this as well, where I think there's some misperceptions sometimes about what the ceiling is with the Salesforce ecosystem. And the shift that we're seeing, and we saw this before COVID-19, and I think you know, what we've been through the past couple months has only highlighted where carriers have had Band-Aids in place, where people know their processes really well, and they've kept the lights on. And now there's this realization that, hey, in order to better respond to acts of God and things out of our control, or to market pressures from competitors, how do we focus on the very best business? And so when that business comes in, it's the identification of, well, who is it that I'm looking at? Have I seen this submission before? Who should it go to? Does it need to go to underwriting? You know, I think a lot of carriers, if they were honest with themselves and they looked at their hit ratios, they would say getting to know is one of the most important things they can do, because if they can get to know quickly and they can use the Salesforce lightning flows to do some of the air traffic control, to do some light rules, and again, not replacing anything that a policy admin system would do, but simply, you know, act as that enterprise workflow engine to say, do I want my ops and IT team spending time doing the triage to document this work? Does this need to go to an underwriter? And if you can get to know quickly, it makes sure that what you're putting in front of your underwriter is exactly what you have an appetite to write, and you're putting it in front of not just the right underwriter, but you're prioritizing that work. It could be a function of attributes of the submission. It could be because you have some SLAs in place with a particular agency that you give, you know, a heightened level of service to. Then when you get to that yes, it's a matter of how can I bring automation to that process? How can I leverage third-party data to maybe fill in some gaps on an application, to, you know, better make a recommendation to my underwriter about whether or not there's an appetite again for this risk and how it should be priced. So we're really seeing a heavy investment right now on that intake and the underwriting workflow. Again, getting to know and then getting the yes with the right price.
100%. And I mean, I think those are great points, and a bit of a reiteration too of what Aaron spoke to, and just the capabilities of the platform, right? Like everything that you're covering right now is not what you immediately think of from a CRM perspective, but really thinking past, you know, how we can build efficiencies into some of that back end process, and you know, to be honest, save a lot of money in the meantime is really helpful. And I'll duplicate a question that Aaron touched on a little bit as well, in terms of, you know, as an industry, we like to build a lot of the technology in-house and proprietary, in terms of potentially an agency-facing portal or just a high-level SOC CRM. How would you answer the question if a customer came to you and asked you why Salesforce, why can't I just build out this for myself?
Well, I think it's a great question, and it's surprising how common it still is. In that build versus buy, I'm very much a buy, and here's why. I don't think there's many of us, and, you know, and I came from, you know, living in the carrier side for 20 years before I joined Salesforce. I'm a former client, and there's one thing that almost every ops and IT project has in common. They take longer than anybody expected, and they're more expensive than anybody expected. And sometimes with these multi-year projects, you get done and realize that the ecosystem that you've invested in has lapped you. What you have is already dated, and there's something new. And so being in that buy mode and investing in an ecosystem that has a lot of third-party players, an App Exchange is the great example of that, of partners like Zennify. It means you've always got multiple hands that you can go shake to work on different solutions, and make sure that you've got best of breed. And it makes sure that you're participating in an environment where people are speaking a common language. A lot of times we get ourselves boxed in with data models and with processes that are a function of our own companies. And we forget that the people that we're doing business with have a lot of other relationships too. And the more that we can speak that common language, that language of insurance, high tide lifts all ships.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think we see this all the time too, in terms of just technical debt buildup and really looking for solutioning to tap into that innovation. One of the reasons why I love Salesforce, if it's not apparent, is really just the look at App Exchange, making sure that there's partnerships available so that you can be really, really agile. And again, as Aaron kind of spoke to, creating that ability to pivot quickly and adjust to the market and take in that innovation is just so important for all of us to sustain a business model and really add that value to the ecosystem we're talking here with agency relationships. So I know we're coming up on time here, but I wanted to ask you before we close out, what are some words of advice we can give to carriers on the line that want to really maximize their distribution force?
Tell you what, and I'll try and keep this brief. Let me give you three, Heather.
Okay.
The first one would be, and I know just kind of bringing it home for the focal point of this webinar today. If you're a carrier listening in and you are looking to build some new solutions with your distribution partners, retail, wholesale, MGA, TPA, doesn't matter. Go out and get voice of customer. One of the biggest mistakes that I think people make is that they assume that they know what their partners need. And sometimes there's surprises when you ask for that candid feedback. And other times it's not a surprise. It's good to affirm the direction that you're going in. But what it does is it deepens that relationship in a way that really helps you on the back end when it comes to adoption. Because if your partners feel like they've had a voice in the process, they're going to be more likely to participate once that solution is revealed. The second one, and it applies internally as well, which is I come from a school where I believe that there are no such things as ops and IT projects. They're all business projects. They're all solving business problems. And it may be the ops and IT is sitting in the driver's seat for those solutions and making recommendations to the business about how they're going to solve those. But to bring the business along. And again, there's lots of stories out there. We don't have to go deep today where something has been built, it functionally works, and people either don't like it or they don't use it after it's been released. So that tight partnership with the business is so important. And then lastly, there's a lot of cool things that Brian unveiled in his demo. And I guess the last piece of advice I'd give to our audience today is don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Start somewhere. You don't have to have the rocket ship upon first release. Start with some things that are really going to bring satisfaction and that performance measurement, that value to your underwriters, your sales teams, your distribution partners, and then keep building on that. Don't let that North Star be daunting. Start somewhere, get that momentum going, and then build on it.
Absolutely, Doug. And as an implementation partner for Salesforce, that is music to my ears. I think, we always try to help customers and coach around one, get honest, get great feedback with whomever you're trying to service and partner with in the industry, whether that's internal or external. Include all of the business leads. It's not just IT. It's not just data. It's not just the business lines. Make sure that there's that good collaboration as you spoke to. And overall, don't be afraid to just start. Start somewhere, get a proof of concept, get your MVP. There's nothing but capabilities on the Salesforce platform to bring in, AI and machine learning and really make that a part of your strategic plan if it isn't already, and make it super actionable. But don't just look at a demo that's full in scope and go, I want to get there today. It's let's create a path to get there. So I think we're wrapping up here. I just want to thank everyone for joining. Doug, Brian, Jake, Aaron, really great conversation. This was, helpful for me. I love hearing from both customers and Salesforce on what's new and the overall investment on the platform. So I want to thank everyone for joining today. If you want to connect again, social@zennify.com for specific questions, but industry related, feel free to reach out to Doug and myself. And thanks everyone for joining today.